because of all the lights in the building, highlighted, the area, and then all the people become kind of like silhouettes.
What is now most extraordinary was once very ordinary. It's all part of being an urban sketcher of Syracuse, New York, who create uncommon work in the most common of places. Sketchers deal in capturing moments.
Moment of life in a village or a city. It's interesting and valuable.
The group is the local chapter of an international organization dedicated to documenting the world one sketch at a time.
We're just recording what's happening that day at that time.
Established in 2007 by a Seattle-based illustrator,
You're done.
There are now over 370 cities in 60 countries, with an ever-growing 120,000 members. A global sketchbook of artists depicting their local communities.
We'll sketch wherever they'll have us.
We try to find different places where we haven't been. Being that it's been a couple of years now, we have been most everywhere, and we try to find a place that people can travel to that's not too far.
I always try to get in more than I should. I should keep it simple.
The group meets monthly for 2-hour sessions. However,
I wish they met every week, not just once a month.
Urban Sketchers work within very defined guidelines.
It's just a series of, I think, about 8 rules. I hate to call them rules because it's really more an encouragement to include all people. We don't criticize anyone. We draw what we see. It's a record of time and place. So, in other words, if a dump truck pulls up in front of what you're sketching, you sketch the dump truck. It's not considered fine art. It's the idea of you do it just for fun.
The hardest thing is letting go of your fears about doing art and not, making yourself not worry about what other people think. It's just the doing of the artwork that is, good for your soul.
We are a fun group, and it is, again, every walk of ability, from the stick figure to the architectural engineer, and we have no judgment.
That first line or the first dot on paper is always scary. You never know how it's going to turn out, but I think that's what makes it kind of challenging. Once you jump into it and just go for it.
There's a good feeling about putting something on the paper that kind of looks like what you're drawing, and there's some benefits in it. Wow, okay, I figured out perspective a little bit, or the shade and the shadow. I captured that, and that's a good feeling.
Not at all a professional artist. I am a newbie.
And the first time I came, when I looked at everybody's notebook at the end, I thought, well, I'm not the worst person here, only the second worst artist. So somehow that gave me encouragement that I could come back and keep trying and keep learning.
How are you doing so far?
Depending upon who looks at it, there are differing opinions as to whether I'm still in kindergarten or whether I've learned some new techniques. But it's fun either way.
Even if you've never sketched, show up. My wife is a good example. I've been coming for 3 years, and after seeing what I was doing, she was like, that looks like fun.
And I had never sketched before. I'd never even had an art class before. And he asked me what I wanted for Christmas, so I said, how about some sketching supplies? And I'm on my second sketchbook, so I'm really enjoying it. I've gotten better at it as I go along because I have been paying more attention to detail. It's a real sense of accomplishment, yet I don't have any pressure to be really good at it. And I don't really think I'm that good, but my friends all are like, wow.
These sketchbooks, I probably have 50 of them lined up on a shelf, and my wife is getting a little concerned.
2021.
Sketchbooks are like sets of fingerprints.
Okay, that's another one.
No two are alike.
Okay, that's my grandson.
And each one tells many stories.
I took a tour in Cuba, and these were schoolgirls.
But it was like 15 below, and it was freezing. This girl was so fascinating. She had the thickest braids I've ever seen. I called it Winter, Winter, Big Fish Dinner.
Every February, urban sketcher Catherine Napo Waring, along with other artists, contributes portraits for a community Faces of February project. The pandemic winter of 2021 was a time of isolation and uncertainty. And the images produced that year were a poignant connection for everyone involved. For Catherine, it was a family affair.
And my daughter-in-law.
And last, and hardly least, there was one more family member to draw.
Huckleberry was a rescue, and I fostered him and then decided to keep him.
For me, I like seeing where there's a sunny day or whatever, where there's a lot of shadow. So shade and shadow and highlights makes for a nice drawing. For me, it's like a meditation. So you're focusing on a scene in a living aspect of the village, right? And it's like 45 minutes or an hour, and you don't really hear or see anything else but that. There's a couple of us that like to do industrial scenes, so we'll look for old industrial areas and railroad yards. There's some interest there, you know, there's a starkness to it. If there's a good amount of rust in the view, that makes it interesting. Old brick, rusty stuff, and that kind of thing. And so this is kind of a commercial grain storage area with you know, the big 10-wheel trucks coming in and out and the dust and all of that. And I pulled in and I asked permission if I could sketch that, and they kind of looked at me like, a what?
Well, as long as I sat in the tree, it wasn't too bad. I did a quick sketch, then I tried to add some color, and of course one would fly away, so you know, you kind of got to go with what you have. Drawing it specifically, we try to stay as close as we can, but like I said, it's interpreted, each individual interprets it a little different. This was along the river. We're sitting at a restaurant and I watched a boat go by. My intent is to try to get the essence of the image. In order to make it be exciting or romanticize it, you have to put sparkle in it and make shadow and use values and color. And I don't go crazy, but I just add enough so the viewer can know it's an onion or a tomato or, you know, whatever it is. I'm not going to block my main focus with a big ugly truck, but I'll put the big ugly truck over here a little. So the bald eagles of Onondaga Lake, I follow them, and I was out there watching the photographers one day. So I was sitting there sketching. Nobody knew I was doing it. So I posted it on the page. Got like 415 likes, which really kind of surprised me. I use total artistic license. So I move things around, I make them fit. I need the inspiration and the subject matter, but I am not that kind of a sketcher. I'm not that. I'm more a little looser. Usually there's so much material, subject matter, it's kind of hard to narrow it down sometimes, and then all of a sudden something just grabs me.
I was sketching a building across the street from Salt City Coffee, and the UPS truck pulled up, so I said, well, there you go. We've done sketching on trips, and my wife and I will dig those out once in a while. This is one of the homes of Jamie Wyeth up on Monhegan Island. These are two little houses right next to where we were staying, what they call the Lighthouse Hill, which is the center of the island. We were always taught as artists that there are sweet spots on the page that are not in the center, and you try to put your focal point there. I think maybe I've fallen back into the idea of putting this focal point right in the center, because it's almost like you're almost doing a greeting card in a sense. There's the spot right there in the middle. My sketches tend to be, I think, what artists call a vignette. It just bleeds out at the edge of the page. It doesn't go to the edges. This is my wife's favorite, and that's very tongue-in-cheek. It's the inside of the parking garage over by the creek walk in Armory Square.
A number of Syracuse urban sketchers are some of Central New York's finest artists, like Dan Shanahan, painting the town again.
Technically speaking, Dan is maybe not an urban sketcher so much as a plein air painter, so he's actually kind of produces a finished product. He'll get there a little early and get set up and get a head start on everybody. The rest of us are crashing through these sketches, 2 of them in a couple of hours. And Dan will be halfway through his when we're all done. So he'll spend the next hour finishing up.
From his street corner studio, Dan is a constant presence around Syracuse. Make way, make way. Because out here, beauty always has the right of way.
I'm using watercolor though, so it's not going to come out exactly like what I see. I actually want to go less literal and more like figure something out. I want to figure out how to add contrast when it's not really there and add a focal point when I can't really figure it out myself.
Dan wasn't always such a public presence.
I was really nervous about people seeing me. I first started, I wanted to be where there wasn't anybody. So I figured I'd go to Oakwood Cemetery because I'll see some straight lines and grave sites, and I'll see some trees, which is more natural lines.
Fall of 2022, Dan Shanahan was honored with an exhibition of his work at the Everson Museum of Art. The show was a small sample size of his explorations around Syracuse.
One of the ones I really like is the other side of the courthouse right there, the front. And it was like the first time I really focused on one building. The contrast wasn't great, but I added contrast, and the humid day made the painting a little softer than normal. I chose to just take really thick paint and do the roof that way, and I think it came out really good, and it's one of the favorites of everybody.
A number of paintings in the collection drew inspiration from the Syracuse neighborhood the locals call the Westcott Nation.
Eventually I went into the neighborhood, like the Westcott neighborhoods, they're near me, the houses are all bunched together, and I like that. My neighborhood in DeWitt, the houses are too far apart to be that interesting to me.
Westcott's had a makeover. From the edge of Thorndon Park to just around the corner and up the block, all the way down, down, down Columbus. Hey Lancaster. Hey Kensington. Hey man, take a picture of this. Syracuse has had a makeover, and the bloom is on the rose. Details, details, details.
That's the Hotel Syracuse.
It isn't hard to figure out why Jerry Farrow became an architect.
My father was a very good artist. He wasn't a professional, but he did a lot of nice drawing work, and I kind of took after him.
And it's no surprise that Jerry is a methodical and meticulous urban sketcher.
I'll do my pencil drawings, and then after that I'll enhance it in a darker line and then put some color on it later on, rather than trying to bring watercolor, doing it there. But some of the people do it very well. Doing it in pencil takes a little bit more time and a little more accuracy to get it to the accuracy of what you're drawing. And I'm more into that kind of thing.
You can take the architect out of the office, but you can't take the office out of the architect.
Because I'll take something and try to get the exact location of where it exists, the drawing I'm going to do, and get a perspective of how much of it I want to show. So rather than just doing a quick start out, I'll get a sense of how much I want to show on that drawing to fill the paper I'm working with. Which is good, because otherwise you start running off into different places you don't really want to go in terms of the space you got available on your sheet.
His downtown Syracuse office is covered with drawings from a previous exhibition at the Marcellus Free Library. The works are a testament to his prolific career and his many travels.
An architect has a tendency to reproduce something as it exists. This is the old Day Brothers building area right there. I like to do things that have the architectural character of what you're doing in a linear manner, okay, as precise as you can do it.
In today's digital world, what was once done by hand is now accomplished with software. But don't tell that to Jerry.
This is my tool for measuring a drawing, and it has different scales on it, so you can use it for an eighth of an inch might be a foot, or a quarter of an inch might be a foot, so you can determine how large a drawing you want to do. So I'll put my triangle on here and use this. These three tools is what I use.
Details, details, details.
The other day I had to go to a physical examination. So I'm waiting in the waiting room, so I drew the picture of the people sitting behind the desk in the waiting room. I always have something in my hand to draw with.
Christine Patsis is one urban sketcher who prefers working with faces instead of forms.
Unfortunately, because I draw in ballpoint pen a lot when I sketch, I can't fix things if I make a mistake. I just have to kind of work the mistakes in.
Although her extensive portfolio includes a wide range of subjects, Christine has always been drawn to portraiture.
There's something just more meaningful to me about doing human beings than buildings or other things. When you draw a tree, it doesn't have to be exactly like the tree. When you draw a person's face, you need to strive to make it look like that person. I like like hearing music, and so it gives me something to do when I'm sitting there listening to music. Sometimes it's frustrating because I will go out and sketch them in person, and drawing a moving target because somehow they don't seem to want to just stand still, and which is, you know, it's another challenge. But having done that sketch from life, for me, sort of breathes aliveness into the portrait when I'm drawing it from a photograph. It's sort of like the back study. I think musical instruments are beautiful, and they have very sensuous and pretty shapes. It adds an element of character to the portrait as well. So, yeah, I do like drawing musicians. It's about being able to be specific and look at the detail. There's an essence or a character in anything you represent in art. Drawing people is just much more significant in that way. We do self-evaluate sometimes against each other, perhaps, in the throwdown at the end of the group.
It must be Christine here covering it for the next.
But that's for our own growth. It's not about making anybody else feel less.
I can recognize certain artists just by what appears in their drawing.
You can come in at any level and just do what you can do and be part of that group.
She has this ability to just capture the facial expressions with just a simple line. There's one in here where she just used watercolor and very simple line work to kind of capture the motion.
And everybody shares their work, and we all learn from each other.
And then I use like an old credit card and just like
make marks.
Yeah.
Well, I was drawing, and of course you get a lot of people walking by. They want to see what you're drawing. And he said, most people wouldn't draw that. And I'm like, exactly. That's why I'm drawing it.
When you accomplish something that you like, it gives you a feeling of accomplishment, and it gives you a feeling of self-worth because it gives you that sense of accomplishment. So I think people will always strive to have something that can give them that. No matter how electronic our lives become, there will always be a need to make something out of nothing and have that sense of accomplishment. A large part of learning to draw is learning how to see.